Hello everyone, welcome. Try to, there we go. It looks like a huge space here, but it's actually a really tight space. Let's see here. Go to my channel to see your guys' comments. View, live stream. Alright. Oh, come on. Okay. So, hello everyone. Hello Ken. Five Caps Films. Izzy. Barry. Let's see. Wait. Hi Alex and everyone watching today. Out of interest, is it British tea you drink? Yes, it is. Today I am drinking Earl Grey, which is my favorite of the teas. Hello American Tours. Hello Joe B. Happy Friday, Alex. Do you have any big Memorial Day weekend plans? Is that this weekend? I'm so busy I never remember holidays and things. Memorial Day weekend, if that's this weekend. Okay. Shoot, I wish I knew that, because I have, like, t-shirts and things on my merchandise store that I would have, like, advertised ahead of time so people could wear it for their Memorial Day, you know, plans and things like that. I didn't know. So, no, I don't have any specific plans this weekend. No, I'm not doing anything. I'm just the usual weekend stuff with my friends and whatnot, so, that's about it. Let's see. Man, I wish I knew that this weekend was Memorial Day, because I would have advertised the t-shirts and things that I had for that. So, let's see. American Tours, Joe B. Let's see. Mark, hello Mark. Five Caps Film says the screen seems dim. I think that's just you, because everything is nice and bright for me. You know, there is one light missing. I thought I'd try something a bit different today, but maybe it's not working. So, I can plug it in, I guess. Let's see. Ken says, heading to California this week. Planning on going to Queen Mary. Oh, awesome. Nice. I hope you enjoy it, because it's been looking really great lately. They've been doing a lot of work on it. When I was there just earlier this month, you know, it doesn't feel like it's been, you know, what is it? Today, May 23rd? So it's been well over 2 weeks since I was last there, and it doesn't feel like it's been that long. It feels like it was barely, I don't know, last weekend. So it's really weird. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. But while I was there at the beginning of May, man, they were doing all kinds of refurbishment projects and things, and retouching paint and fixing various things on the ship. It was really cool to see all the work that they're putting into the ship, and I mean, seeing all the custodians, you know, polishing the wood paneling and shining the brass and all that kind of stuff. So it was really, really neat. I enjoyed being there, but yeah, so Barry says screen seems fine over here in the UK. Yeah, normally I have several different lights that are set up, and they light up the background, they light up me, and I took one away because I thought, is this really doing anything? And you know, but I mean, I don't really see an issue. Yeah. Anyway, let's see here. Mark, yes, the update for the phone is, it was, yeah, I hate it too, actually. because when it happened, I didn't know it was going to happen. It just happened. My phone just shut down and then updated, and then I don't like the new operating system. I can't figure anything out. It's very different from what it used to be. I don't like that kind of stuff. I feel like if I like the operating system a phone has, I should be allowed to keep it, because it's working, But Android was just like, oh, we'll just update everything. Let's see. Five Cats Film says, it feels like the year just started and now we are halfway through the year. It's crazy. Yes, I agree. It feels like the year has barely started, and it's going to be June in just a few days. So it's just insane. Just, Oh, I got a text. Well, hold on. Let's see. All right. So, a few topics today. One, did you guys see the short film that Shiloh and I made? We're really proud of that short film. We worked really hard on it. We planned it for almost a month in advance before we even filmed it. Bringing in various ideas. It was the final week before I went to California that we really hunkered down and just planned out every last detail of that video. So I hope you liked it. We filmed it aboard the Queen Mary, and it doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue. It doesn't have a huge conflict or anything. It's really just meant to be like an artistic kind of short film. Gotta preheat everything. So, but it was interesting to film it because, the ship is very different today than what it was back in its sailing career. And so it was difficult to... We originally wanted to film like a voyage on the ship, like recreate a whole voyage. But as we went scene by scene, planning it out, we realized it just could not be done. The ship just... There's a lot that's the same, but various services and things for the passengers do not exist anymore. Things like the library, the drawing room, the barber shops and things like that. Those various services do not exist anymore. And so you can't show someone doing those things because it's not there. So we had to kind of figure out a way around it. We wanted to work with the differences as opposed to against them. So, that's when we came up with the idea of, well, what if he's taken this voyage and you, the audience, are seeing that there's differences. Even the passengers, the modern day passengers who are dressed as if they're, wearing modern clothing, juxtapose the main character, Felix's clothing. Everything is different, and they don't even acknowledge that he's there. So we kind of went through it scene by scene and went, okay, how can we kind of hint that something is off, and that you should, kind of take hints at it. So it was really, really neat to do. We had a room, so I stayed on a room, M102, I believe it was, a very amazing room. I want to stay in there again. That was cool. It was part of the Windsor suite, so I didn't have the whole suite, but it was part of the Windsor suite, and it included a king bed, and then there was a servant's quarters attached to it. So there was a second bed. It was a twin-size bed, and that was in the servant's quarters. And the servant's quarters had its own wash basin and everything. It was like a little mini apartment within the whole room, which is a really neat feature when you think about staying in a hotel today. You know, you don't often see that. You know, if you need an adjoining room, then you book an adjoining room. But in this case, it wasn't like that. It was like the room came with a bedroom, a separate bedroom. So that was interesting. It was like a little mini suite, if anything. Evan Scott says, I wish I could see your new podcast video. Can you not make it members only? So Evan Scott, that podcast video will publish publicly in 45 minutes. So it's scheduled to publish at 2 p.m. All my videos and things are usually provided to my members early. So they get to see it first, and then it goes public. So even though you're seeing a little sign that says members first, it doesn't mean that it's always going to stay for them. It will go public. And so that podcast is going to go public in just 45 minutes, less than 45 minutes. So, and it's a cool podcast. We talk all about the room that I stayed in, and then the film that we made, and then there's lots of Queen Mary news on that. So if you guys want to hear Queen Mary news, there's a lot of it. I think we were able to dedicate something like 17 minutes of the beginning of that podcast to Queen Mary news. So interesting stuff. Hope you guys watch it. And I'll be sure to notify you guys during this live stream when that goes public, because now that'll be 40 minutes from now. So, yeah. Yeah, I think, let's see, Ficast Film says, I think the most Art Deco looking room on the ship is the smoking room. It's pretty Art Deco looking. Well, the thing is the whole ship is in Art Deco style. But I think the reason why you say that is because when people normally think of Art Deco, they don't think of streamlined modern. They think of like the New York City kind of Art Deco, like Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, all that kind of stuff. They think of the very Americanized 1920s Art Deco. And so yeah, if you go into the smoking room and you look up towards the dome of the smoking room, you get a lot of those 1920s-esque Art Deco vibes. But the whole ship is designed in streamlined modern Art Deco. So it's a later Art Deco from the 1930s through the 1940s. It's, you know, it's the later half of the Art Deco period. And yeah, so that's why there's the Queen Mary features lots of curves and things. Everything has kind of like a curved or a smooth edge to it, whereas that smoking room, you stand in the center and there's lots of sharp angles and flat walls and things like that, and that's very reminiscent of the earlier half of the Art Deco age. So, okay, okay, that's pre-warmed. Now I'll go ahead and dump all of that out. Okay, I can kind of see now it's getting dark in here. I had my window open, so it's should be pretty bright, but I'll go ahead and plug in the other light. So be right back. Here. Here we go. All right. That should be better. It was nice and sunny, and the sun was out just a second ago, and so my whole room was lit up, but I guess I do need that other light. But yeah. I said that I meant the rounded area that extruded out. I think you're either talking about the fireplace or you're talking about the dumbwaiter. Because they're on opposite sides of the room. Matthew says, I always thought of Queen Mary as Edwardian liner in the Art Deco cosplay. Really? I would have said the opposite. I would have said it was an Art Deco liner in an Edwardian cosplay. Because the inside is all Art Deco. The outside looks a lot more Edwardian. So I would say it's an Art Deco ship in Edwardian cosplay. So, but yeah, it's, but Queen Mary does carry a lot of her Edwardian styles and services and things. You know, like for instance, well, try to think of, besides the stuff on the outside, I talk about that stuff all the time, like the well deck and all that. You know, like ships in the Art Deco age didn't really have well decks. The Queen Mary was the only one that did. Unless I'm wrong, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the case. But I'm talking about like stuff on the inside of the ship. Oh, great! I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but there are features of the Queen Mary, not just physical features, but services and things that were not generally available on other liners at the time because it was kind of antiquated, and the Queen Mary had them. So yeah, I can't think of anything in particular, but I know there is. I can't remember it. Let's see. Welcome, Five Caps Films, to the Historian member level. Five Caps Films says, it's the part that I think is the painting of what I think is a lighthouse. It's a pillar with a, well, it's got something on top of it. I don't remember if it's a conch shell or if it's a compass. It's because I know the conch shell is somewhere in the image. I just don't remember if it's at the top or if it's. But yeah, I know what you mean. So that is sitting above the dumbwaiter, and so the dumbwaiter is where the servers, the stewards, would get, you know, like drinks and snacks and, you know, stuff like that would come up through the dumbwaiter, and then they would pick it up from there. And then there was also cabinets underneath that would have silverware and various other things that the people in the smoking room might need when they're, you know, having drinks and stuff like that. Cocktails and things would come up from the dumbwaiter. So, yeah, all kinds of stuff. Alright, what was I gonna... Oh, right, I was gonna brew tea, so let me go ahead and dump this out. Alright, so... fill that up. This goes in, it's 120, oh, whoops, not the whole thing. It's 127. Oh, come on. There we go. I think at one, I hate how this thing gets off-centered like that, and then the lid doesn't fit. Oh, whatever. I know it can fit, it just doesn't always fit. Alright, so, yeah, and then this thing... I had ideas of what I wanted to talk about on the live stream today, but I get so easily distracted that I forget the things I want to talk about. Well, for one thing, I guess this really doesn't have much to do with my channel in particular, but tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time, I'll be featured on my friend's channel. It's Signs of Amusement, And so that's because when I went to California earlier this month, I also went to Disneyland. And if you've been on my channel long enough, you'll know that I used to cover only exclusively Disneyland history. And I used to go there every week also and film vlogs and stuff. And so basically, like, everything I do now when it comes to the Queen Mary, I used to do for Disneyland a long time ago. And so it had been like 5 or so years since the last time I had been to Disneyland, because I was there the day it closed, just before the pandemic. And so it was interesting to go back and see the park again through a different lens and through a different time. I mean, 5 years isn't so long. I mean, there's people who haven't been to Disneyland in 20 years or even all their life. But there have been a lot of changes in these past 5 years. The park, I almost said the ship, the park looks nothing like it did when I left. It is so different. And so I'll be sharing those thoughts and talking about the journey tomorrow on my friend's channel, Signs of Amusement. And if you're interested, in the description below is a link to his channel. It says Signs of Amusement. You just click on that, it takes you to his channel, and just tune in tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific time. So I also have posted a like a little flyer on my posts on my channel, so you can see that I'll be there. I think the chat must have frozen because I haven't seen anybody. Oh no, I guess that's it. No one's just chatting. Okay. I was like, I'm surprised because usually when I do these live streams, I get constant like questions and comments and things, and I usually can't keep up with it. But the chat hasn't moved in a while, so I was actually kind of surprised by that. All right, one more minute on that tea. Hello, Justin. Good to see you here. Podcast Film says, I think it's because it's Friday. It probably is because it's Friday. I couldn't do the live stream tomorrow because I'm doing a live stream on my friend's channel. And then afterwards, I have to go feed some cats. Some friends of mine went out of town and they want me to, take care of their, well, not take care, but to feed their cats and go to their apartment once in a while and feed their cats. So I just didn't have time tomorrow to do a live stream. It takes an hour to get ready for a live stream. Even this one took an hour. And then usually there's some kind of technical difficulty. Like right before this one started, my computer wasn't recognizing the camera. It just wouldn't acknowledge that the camera was plugged in. And so I must have spent like 5 minutes just trying to get the camera connected and started. And I hate when it does that, but there really is no solution to that, I don't think. It's just up to the computer to recognize the camera when I plug it in. Fivecat Swim says, do you use OBS? Sometimes it messes up. Yes, I use OBS. So right now this whole live stream is being done through OBS. It's tea time. And yeah, OBS does mess up. But what I like about OBS is it's free, and I've used it for so long that I understand how it works. So even when it messes up, I know, I can predict what'll happen, or I can predict how to fix it, Oops, yeah. But yeah, I do use OBS. Dumped out. I miss the days when I would do these streams and I would have like tea sandwiches and things, because right now I could really use a tea sandwich, little finger sandwich. But like I said, every time I do shopping for groceries and things, it never lines up enough with these live streams, and so the ingredients just go bad by the time I do one of these live streams. So I just can't. So I use stuff that doesn't go bad quickly, I have these McVitie's chocolate-covered digestives, and then I have these Scottish shortbread from Walker's. So that's usually what I have. But I miss the days when I would do sandwiches. One and a half. And so Matthew says, what's the plan for the land where the English village was? So that's an interesting question, because I've noticed that if you go online and look at news articles and things that talk about it, there's a lot of conflicting information. It'll tell you one thing, but then it's not actually the case. So let me clarify that for you guys, because I know that if you go look it up yourselves, it's not going to make any sense. One article says they're going to use it for this thing, the other article says they're going to use it for the other thing, and frankly, that's because the people writing those articles have no clue what they're talking about. I don't know what it is. I've had to deal with that. I've had to deal with it. I haven't had to deal with it, but I've had to dispel a lot of misinformation from news articles since I basically started covering Queen Mary stuff, because they always get things wrong somehow. And it's like, if I can get the information accurate, and I'm just doing it by reading up on, on inspection reports and, and stuff like that, and talking to people on the ship and stuff like, the like management and stuff like that. Like, how is it I can get more accurate information than the press can, and they're the ones interviewing these people? So anyway, yeah, it's just some frustration on my part. But anyway, to answer your question, what they're going to do is they're going to turn that English village into a parking lot, which I know doesn't sound like a good trade-off, like you're replacing a cool-looking English village with a parking lot. I get it. But they do need that parking lot. And the reason why is because on the opposite side of the entire parking lot area, closest to the highway, is going to be a temporary amphitheater that'll seat between 10 to 12,000 people, where they can perform music shows and things like that on a much more frequent basis than they've ever done next to the Queen Mary before. Because, as you know, there are music festivals that get set up next to the Queen Mary. They do these interesting, it has nothing to do with Queen Mary, but there's hip hop festivals and stuff like that, rock concerts and things like that. And it really has nothing to do with Queen Mary, and the only space they've had to set those things up was right next to the ship. And of course, management doesn't want that stuff right next to the ship because it bothers the everyday guest that visits. But they do want it on property because it helps generate money towards the Queen Mary. So they're setting up a temporary amphitheater that is being funded by the city itself, because it does belong to the city. And that amphitheater will last up to 10 years. It's what it's guaranteed. But that's because they're going to be building a permanent amphitheater in what is currently Harry Bridges Park, which is just right outside the bow of the Queen Mary. So maybe less than 800 feet away from the Queen Mary. And it's right along the water's edge of the harbor with a great view of downtown. And they're going to build a permanent amphitheater on Harry Bridges Park. And that amphitheater, I think, will be smaller, between 8 to 10,000 seats, which doesn't sound all that good. I think, why does the temporary amphitheater have a higher capacity than the permanent one? I hope they fix that. I hope that the permanent amphitheater can seat more people than the temporary one. But in any case, the temporary amphitheater will last up to 10 years. We don't really know how long it's going to stay there. It could be there 5 years. It could be there the full 10 years. We really don't know. But yeah, so they'll be able to host a lot more music festivals and concerts on the parking lot land, which will help generate more money for the Queen Mary. And so they've been preparing for that for a while. And so because they have to take up some of the parking lot to build the temporary amphitheater, they need the English Village demolished so they could pave over that, turn that into extra parking. And because the English Village is so close to the Queen Mary, people will be able to park closer to the Queen Mary, which is a plus for the visitors because some of them were forced to park way out in the corner where the temporary amphitheater will be built. And that's a long walk to the ship, and people complain about that walk. So, paving over the English Village will be a good thing for the ship ultimately. All right, so let's see here. Ozzy says Alex is almost at 81,000 subscribers. Yep. 81,000 subscribers. That's pretty cool. I remember days of when I would dream of reaching 80,000. So, but my current dream is 100,000. So if you guys can help me get there, that'd be great. I'd love to get that silver plaque that YouTubers get to put on the wall for having 100,000 subscribers. That's something that like I've met YouTubers who started their journey and then, you know, a year later they reached 100,000 subscribers, and I'm like, I've been doing this for 9 years and I haven't reached 100,000 subscribers. I've had to claw my way tooth and nail for subscribers. It's not easy. I guess history content just isn't as popular as you know, various other content, but I try. I really try. There are YouTubers who successfully get big on YouTube from, you know, from subscribers, and they do history content. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe my content just isn't as interesting. I don't know. Let's see. Justin says, famous maritime historian Peter Canigo had a lot of kind words for you on your documentation and news on the Queen Mary. I said a big thank you on your behalf. I watch you both all the time. Oh, wow, that's really nice of him. I didn't know he said anything. Oh, wow, that actually kind of makes me feel good because, you know, like, what I do, I actually just made a Facebook post about this very subject, which is that what I do on YouTube, I don't do it for like fame and fortune. I mean, granted, of course, I wish I had more views and I wish I had more subscribers, but that's because the content I make, well, why make content if you don't want people to see it? So I want people to see it. I want more and more people to see it and gain especially a lot more publicity for the Queen Mary because, you know, at the moment, like right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no commercials on TV for the Queen Mary and stuff like that at the moment. And I think it's because, you know, their marketing budget is very small. You know, right now the ship isn't being leased by a major company like it used to, like Urban Commons or Disney. Right now, it's just the city owns the ship and they're contracting its operation to, you know, to Evolution Hospitality, and so so there really isn't a huge budget for the ship right now for anything, and so the ship needs that help. It needs that publicity, but also it needs positive publicity because for the last 30 some odd years, previous managements and things have really run the ship down and gave it a really bad reputation. You know, people have been really, they've been seeing a dark side to corporate, you know, corporate leasing of the ship. And this current management is actually really good. They're really doing positive things. I know sometimes it makes it sound like I'm some kind of like, you know, corporate shill for this company, but in actuality, it's because I see that they actually care. They're doing things and they're trying to make things work, and they're listening to people. That's the cool thing. You talk to any of the people in the management, such as Dylan Madison, who operates the attractions on Queen Mary. You talk to one of the managers, Steve Kaloka or Lucas. You know, they're really great people, and they listen to what people say, and they try to incorporate changes when they hear about it, So that's one of the cool things about it. That's why I'm such a big fan of what they do, is because they actually care about the history of the ship, they care about maintaining it, and they want to see it successful. In previous managements, they didn't have a lot of... they didn't necessarily want to see the ship successful. They wanted it to make money so they could make money, but they weren't willing to invest in the ship because, they felt like, well, if it's not making us money now, why would I put money into the ship? And this management doesn't think that way. They think the right way, which is if you invest in the ship, it will, return your profits and dividends. So that's why I like this management so much. And so I try to give, a more realistic and positive spotlight on the ship. And it's working. So, I say, in 15 minutes, you'll see that the podcast gets posted publicly to all you guys. And you'll see that in there I talk about how there's, there was many members of management and various, employees who approached me on my last visit, and they wanted to meet me and shake my hand and say hello. And some of them even said thank you for making your videos, because it's really helped the ship. And it also helps bring attention to the little details, the things that get fixed that nobody would generally notice. Paint touch-ups where the paint should be touched up. People would never notice that it's happened. The difference. And on my channel, I like to show people the before and after of things, so they can really see how even the littlest things make the ship a lot better. So I know I ramble a lot, but that's just my nature. But yeah, so that's what I try to do. So it actually makes me feel really good that someone like Peter Canigo is saying nice things about me, because I think sometimes it can feel like some of the Queen Mary fan groups, they probably think negatively about me. And at times it does feel like that. It feels like I'm being shunned by some of the fans of Queen Mary just because I make content about the Queen Mary. But I think it's because they don't really understand that I'm here to help, not to make things worse. So, and I think I have helped. At first I was not too sure. I was like, well, I try to make content that, brings a spotlight to the Queen Mary, but I don't know if it's doing anything. But years later, now I'm like, it has been doing something. I can see the differences. So, yeah, I like what I do. Five Caps Home says, Alex, did you know that in the 1930s the Union Pacific Railroad had a steam turbine locomotive? They also later on had gas turbines. Yes, I did. I don't know much about it, but I do know they had it, and I've seen pictures of it. Joe B says, about how many guests' hotel rooms are there currently on Queen Mary? There are about 350 hotel rooms, but I think at the moment about 250 to 275 are available to book. The other 100 are not. They are still in need of refurbishment and whatnot. So because all the budgets they're working with on the ship are really small, they try to focus on the key rooms that need refurbishment and cleaning. And also they're probably a bit short-staffed. After the pandemic, it's been really hard to hire people. You don't get the same quality of people who are seeking jobs than they used to. So, and then also the fact that it's probably just a general thing happening around the country, but jobs just don't pay enough. That's just a general thing across the country, is that jobs just don't pay enough for what we need, So that probably has a bit of, a a bit of what am I trying to say? It plays a part, I think. Granted, I don't know how much they pay on the Queen Mary for those jobs, so I'm probably just, talking out of thin air, but I imagine that might be an issue, because it's an issue for everybody else, so it's not really any different. But, let's see. Ozzy says they're working on SS United States and they're cutting pieces off her fast. Yeah, that I know. So... it's unfortunate, but... I was telling people, I have a whole video about all my opinions on SS United States. So, if you want to see it, just, I think it's on various... what do you call it? It's on various playlists, but if you just go back in time to the previous videos I've made and you just look back, should have been earlier this year that I had listed a whole bunch of my opinions on SS United States and what's going on with it, and so I don't want to repeat all of those, but what I will say is that what's happening with SS United States and the museum that's going to be built in Okaloosa County is actually one of the best things to happen for the SS United States in the last 30 some odd years, probably even the last 50 years. I know it's horrible, it sounds like, oh, but the ship is going to sink. Yes, but the ship is not completely disappearing. It's going to be there, it's going to be underwater, people will be able to see it if they scuba dive, but even better is that there is a museum on land that will be built that will look like the SS United States from the outside, and when you go inside there'll be lots of cool things that you can explore, and I'm sure it will be ADA accessible as well, so anybody in wheelchairs or people who have difficulty walking should be able to get around the museum pretty easily and see all these cool things that even Queen Mary doesn't have. And I think people, of course that's not enough for people. Of course they want more, they want to see the ship fully restored and all of that, but the thing is, and I've been saying this from the beginning, there is nothing to restore. There's nothing there. There's nothing on the ship. It's an empty shell, and anything you try to put in it will be like fitting, a square peg in a round hole. It's difficult. You have to custom build everything. Even for the Queen Mary, you look at the doorways that face the corridors. Those doorways, each of them has a very specific slant, and any door that you make that replaces that door has to be cut specifically for that one doorway. It can't be put in the other doorways because it won't fit the same way. And the same thing goes for the SS United States. Anything you build on that ship, you can't just mass produce it and buy it from Home Depot or something. It has to be specifically custom made to fit that ship, which brings the cost of restoration much, much higher than it used to be. And so, and then trying to recreate spaces on the ship that no longer exist, I mean, the expense of that. No one can afford it. No one really, well, okay, there are people who can afford it, but no one wants to pay that amount of money. If they did, there would have been companies by now. I mean, it's been sitting there for 30 years, trying to attract investors and stuff, and they haven't really got it. It would have happened by now if somebody really wanted it to happen. So that's the thing is that either it sits in Philadelphia for another 30 years with, getting worse and worse and continuing to rust and fall apart. Because it is rusting and falling apart. You really look at, I've seen drone footage around the ship where it goes all the way around and you look very close at the decks. There's holes in the decks. There's railing falling right off the side of the ship. There's, it's in worse condition than Queen Mary. And that's saying a lot, So, I had less confidence in the restoration of the SS United States than I did in the Queen Mary. And so, yeah, I didn't see a future for the ship, honestly. They have the New York Coalition to save the SS United States. They haven't yet presented like their full ideas on how they're going to acquire the ship, how they're going to pay for that, how they're going to, to move it, who's going to pay for moving it. Before it moves back up to New York, it has to stay in Mobile for a while the legality is sorted. Who's going to pay for that? So it's like they haven't talked about those specific details. And so my whole thing has been like, if you can't present an idea, like an actual like plans on paper for how you're going to save the ship, then everything else is just pipe dreams. Yeah, they have a dock for keeping the ship in New York. Not New York, but Brooklyn. And yeah, they have ideas for what they want to do with the ship after it gets there. But as far as I know, everything is bogged down in controversy. Like, I mean, I don't want to get into... Never mind, I'm not going to get into specific details, but there are controversies that surround where they're going to keep the ship and what they want to do with it and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, I don't see a future for the ship in that either. I see more problems ahead. And so I'm thinking like, this museum they want to build on the land is the best thing to ever happen to the SS United States in the last 30 years. If I ever make it down to Florida, which I don't think I will, Florida's too hot. But if I do, I'd want to visit that museum. I'd want to see it. And you'll be able to see the original funnel and, and the original masts on the front of the ship. You'll see a recreated, what do you call it? A recreated superstructure on the front of the ship, that kind of thing. So it'll look really neat, and there'll be a propeller on display, and it's going to be really cool. So I think that's honestly the best thing to happen to the SS United States in the last 30 years. Because the only alternative is it's going to sit for another 30 years and no one will be able to enjoy it. So, yeah, I think that's my opinion on that. But Arnaud says, I have a question about the Queen Mary. My question is, what happened to all those hatches, the cargo hatch, funnels, engine, and steering gear hatch? Thanks for your answer. Okay, so when it comes to the hatches on Queen Mary, and for those that don't know, the hatches are the vertical tunnels that go from those engineering spaces all the way to the top of the ship and provide access to fresh air. Those hatches, and also they're designed so if the ship is refurbished and things like that, cranes can lower down into the ship and haul things up or put things in. I'm hiccuping, my gosh. Let me try to... But those hatches, most of them have been sealed up and decked over on every level. So the funnel hatches, for instance, well, you can actually walk inside some of those funnel hatches today, no problem. For instance, if you go to the main hall on Promenade Deck on Queen Mary, there's two places where you can walk right through the funnel hatches. The forward funnel hatch has a sports room in it. So if you go in there, there's little tabletop sports games and then a TV displaying sports happening. So you can go in there and it's a little sports room, and that is the funnel hatch for the forward funnel of the Queen Mary. The middle funnel hatch on that same level is now used as a pre-show for one of the ship's tours. So basically it just kind of talks about like the history of the ship, so that way they can just quickly get people on the tour going, and so they can see more of the ship. And actually, I think that's a really genius idea, because the tour guides used to have to give like a 10-minute spiel about the history of the Queen Mary before they started their tour. Now they got a video they can show people that does that for them. So that's actually pretty cool. But yes, on every level, the funnels are decked over, and those hatches technically no longer exist. The same thing goes for... I think at least one of the engine hatches is decked over on every level. I have it on good authority that The other engine hatch is not decked over on every level, but I don't know for certain. That's not for certain. But and then when it comes to the steering gear hatch, that is decked over on almost every level, going all the way up. So, yeah, that for sure. They've decked over everything, and it gave the ship a lot more square footage to work with after it was converted to a hotel and museum. So that's about it. The cargo hatches are not decked over on every level, but the cargo hatch number 2, that one has an elevator inside of it, a really big elevator actually. It's designed to hold a lot of people, and so there's an elevator in that hatch. So that hatch is completely used up by an elevator. But yeah, so that's pretty much what happened to every hatch on the ship. Five Caps Film says, I think leasing out the ship to big companies was not the best idea, especially after seeing what happened. Yes, I agree. It was not a good idea, but nobody really knew it wasn't a good idea at the time, and especially in the early, the 1970s and 1980s. Jack Rather, for instance, from the Rather Corporation, he took good care of the Queen Mary, but at the same time, he also kind of mutilated the Queen Mary, especially his wife, Bonita. I mean, they did a great job with Disneyland Hotel. They ran Disneyland Hotel so well, and Bonita Rather, she was very good at designing interiors for modern buildings. But as soon as Bonita had creative control of the Queen Mary, she tried to incorporate her own style into everything. Like, she tried to upgrade the Queen Mary to look more modern. And she did all kinds of things all over the ship to do that, and it ruined it. And so, but they did take care of the ship, though. I will say that. They made sure it was well maintained and everything was in functioning, working order. So they did positive things, they did negative things. Disney, they were the same. They did a lot of positive, but then they did some negative. One of the biggest negative things they ever did to the Queen Mary was marketing the ship as haunted. Disney was the first company to go, take haunted tours on the Queen Mary and experience all the ghosts and apparitions and the vortex to the spirit realm and all that junk. Disney was the first people to do it. They wrote all kinds of scripts to make it happen, and then they created special effects and things all over the ship to make that look like it's real, and ever since then, it's been persistent that the whole haunted aspect of the ship has been very persistent. And the thing is, it does make some money, so that's why they keep doing it. They keep marketing it as a haunted ship, and they still sell haunted tours. The haunted tours actually are not that bad. I tell people, if you really want to see a lot of the ship that you don't get to see otherwise, take the haunted tour, because you get to see a lot more of the ship. But I don't like that they have a lot of fake stories that Disney made up that they tell on their haunted tours. And it's become to the point where so many of them have been told for 30 years that half those stories you don't really know are whether true or false. So there are some true ghost stories on the ship. But you don't know which ones were made up by Disney, and you don't know which ones were not. It's difficult sometimes. There is a book about it, actually. I don't know what book, but there's a book that tells you the differences. But yeah, so that's kind of my thing about the whole. Brian Bertrand says, so it's not really haunted? It is. It's just not haunted by some of the spirits that they say it's haunted by. Like, the lady in white, who's often seen by the piano and whatnot, that's a fake story. Jackie in the swimming pool room, that's a completely fake story. Disney made that one up for sure. They even created a whole show around it, like a show that you go in the room and they do all these special effects and things, and Jackie never happened. There's no record of any Jackie on the ship or anybody who was her same age that died or anything like that. Like, it's not real, you know. The story of someone being dismembered in room B340, you know, or even there's also a softer version of that story where the person just simply died, you know, like they, you know, so yeah, it's fake. There are ghosts on the ship though. I've seen weird things happen, but nowhere near to the level that is advertised. It's usually little things, like you feel like a tap on the shoulder. You could swear someone tapped you on the shoulder. Then you turn around, there's no one there. Or like when I was last on the ship, there was actually quite a few things. One, I was walking down B deck by myself, because this was on, I want to say Cinco de Mayo. I was by myself on the ship that day. I was walking down B deck, and the whole corridor was empty as far as the eye could see. In fact, some of those rooms are not available for hotel guests right now. Those are the rooms that are waiting restoration. So a lot of B deck is like right now permanently empty. I'm walking down B deck, and I could hear someone's footsteps behind me walking up to me. And so I'm like, oh, I better move to the side to let them pass me, because I'm going slow. You know, I'm just strolling through the ship, just enjoying it, you know. And so, because that's what I like to do. I just like to walk and enjoy the atmosphere of something. So I'm walking, and I move over, and I look behind me to say hello or, you know, whatnot. But there was nobody there. They walked right up to me, and I turned my head and, you know, to say hello. There was nobody there. Of course, I felt like a fool, because I'm like, I was about to talk to someone who wasn't there. But I could have sworn there was a person there. You could feel their presence, and you could hear them walking. And I just thought it was another, you know, maybe an employee, maybe it was a, you know, but there was nobody. And you could, and when I turned around, there was no one down the corridor as far as the eye could see. And I was in a part of the corridor where no one could easily hide from me. Like, they came right up to me, and there was no, like, corner where they could, like, hide and get out of view. I was in a part of the ship where it was just, you know, walls and doors. And I didn't hear them go through a door. You know, those things make noise. When you put a key card up to it, it clicks really loudly, and you hear it unlock. None of that. None of that. When the door closes, it makes a very loud click as the latch latches, and it just, nothing. There's no one there. So there was that, and then we also captured, so I tell people a lot of those orb stories that you hear are completely fake. Most orbs on camera is dust or bugs or dirt on the lens, honestly. And so, yeah, so whenever people show me like pictures of like the orbs on Queen Mary and stuff, I'm like, that's dust, you know, that's dust. But there was one time, I think it was last year, where I had sent Chris to the Queen Mary to film a bunch of stuff so I could make a news report. I could update people about stuff that was happening on the ship. And I had him walking over by the third-class staircase right in front of the synagogue. And I had him pan around so that way I could get some footage of the area. I wanted to make a video about the synagogue, and so I thought, oh, you know, I need footage of that area. So I had him pan the camera around. And if you had looked very closely in the footage, and I showed this publicly, but people didn't believe me, of course, you know. People don't believe in orbs. But there was a little blue orb that appeared out of nowhere, flew towards the wall next to the synagogue, disappeared into the wall, then came back out again and flew up and disappeared. And I caught that on camera. And the thing is, the way it moved and how quickly it moved, because it moved fast. You know, the only thing it could have been was a bug or something. But B-Deck is way down deep in the ship. There's no bugs down there. There's no, like, flies and bugs and whatnot. Like, and even if there was, you could clearly see that this thing disappeared into the wall and then came back out again. That's not possible. Bugs do not just phase through walls. So it was very weird. And so that was the first time I captured an orb. and it looked just like an orb that I had seen in my sister's haunted apartment, because she had a haunted apartment that I lived in. I have a whole video about that, by the way, because that's a whole story of its own. But yeah, but this time around when I was on the ship, me and Shiloh were filming a scene, and I was walking behind him, filming him going up to Sun Deck, and everything looked fine when I filmed it. If there's usually an issue, like I see dust particles everywhere, or I see bugs flying around, I'll have him refilm it, or we'll move to another area to do a similar scene, because I don't want that in the video. Well, while we're editing the video together, we see that as he's walking up, this is during the daytime, he's walking upstairs, there is what appears to be like a double orb. It's like two orbs, like off center, and it comes like out of nowhere, and then flies around him, and then goes back pretty much to where it came. And it was so fast, and it just kind of like disappeared. And I thought at first, I'm like, that was a huge dust particle. I was like, like, how could I have not noticed that? I was filming it right there. If I had seen it, I would have reshot the scene so that wasn't in the scene. And, but I thought, no, there was nothing there. I would have refilmed it if I had seen something. And it couldn't have been a bug either. I would have noticed a bug, especially bugs. I don't like bugs. I thought maybe it's something on the camera lens, but I keep the camera lens very clean, and and it doesn't appear like something on the camera lens, because if it was something on the camera lens, it would stay in the general area of where it's dirtying the camera. Even though the camera has a slight, what do you call it, stability feature, it would still stay relatively in the same area of the screen. Just like a certain section. But this went like way out all over the screen, flew around Shiloh and disappeared. But we saw that, and I'm like, okay, maybe it was just dust or a bug. It could have been either of those. I was fine thinking that. So we continue on editing, and then we get to a scene where it's nighttime. It's the same staircase, exact same one. This time I'm standing at the top of it looking down, and he is walking up towards me. And in the shot, you can see the same exact type of orb or dust or bug fly out of the wall, and then right in front of the camera do like a little zigzag. I think it actually goes down and back up again, and then does a little zigzag, and then it disappears back into the wall. And I was like, okay, this was shot at nighttime with a different view. In this particular shot, if it was a bug, you would see it land on the wall, right? Like, it was so close to the camera that you would have seen it land on the wall or something. This was a different point of view, different light perspective. The light should have been shining in such a way that I could see where the object originated from and where it went. But you can't. And let me remind you, this isn't like, 2008 cell phone footage. This is a 4K high definition camera. I would have seen the features of the bug or something. Like, there was... So, after that, and I'm like, and this was the same hallway, just a different time of day. And so I'm like, you know what? I was like, I'm ready to call that an orb. Two orbs in the same staircase, in relatively the same area of the staircase. Weird. So yeah, I do know the ship is haunted. It's just not haunted by all the crazy stuff that they claim it is. There's no Jackie, there's no dismembered body or whatever, and all that. So it's not, yeah. Oh. Hello, Dino. Thank you so much. Let me go back to... Some people had commented before. Sorry, I'm going back to make sure I'm answering people's questions because there was a lot of questions while I was on my rant. Okay, let's see. Answered that. Answered that. So Caesar asks, is the Russian Scorpion submarine being removed next to Queen Mary? It will be, yes. They're making plans for it as we speak. It's a possibility that we won't see it fully removed anywhere from 1 to 2 years from now. But they are actively planning it. There was a recent update about it and how they're working with the environmental department and all that kind of stuff to figure out a plan. So it's going to happen. It just may take 12 to 24 months to fully remove it, but it will happen. And for those that are wondering what will happen, they're going to basically they can't scrap it because the metal's not worth anything because it's so rusted and corroded. But it will be chopped up into little pieces and disposed of. So that's what will happen to it. Let's see here. Speaking of hotel rooms, whatever became of the B-deck forward cabins that they started to renovate under Prevotil? Were they finished to original standards or they put up drywall? I actually don't know. I haven't seen the interiors of those rooms. What I do know is that the majority of them have what appears to be drywall with a dado at the bottom. It actually looks pretty nice because there were some rooms on the ship that had like white painted paneling with a dado at the bottom, and that's what these look like. It's a bit more modern, of course, because the current stuff is like, they have to use modern materials now, but it does look nice. It looks like a clean hotel room. But as far as I know, that's what it is. But I don't know if it's up to original standards. I don't think we'll really ever see that because of how difficult it is to do that with a small budget now. But yeah, that's as far as I know about it. But a good example would be B340. That's one of the rooms that got completely overhauled, and I would say up until last year, that room looked really nice as a hotel room. Like it looked very comfortable. They market it as the most haunted room on the ship, but it actually looks like a very comfy hotel room. But the thing is recently they've painted all those walls like a maroon, blood red, wine red kind of color and then they redecorated it to look like kind of Victorian looking, which does not match the ship at all. And it's because it's marketed as the most haunted room on the ship. They want it to look haunted. So, of course, this is just my opinion. So I know management's probably watching this live stream, or they will eventually. And I'm not a fan of that. But, at the same time, it's like, it's one room out of the whole ship. It's like, I should just chill out, basically. It's because it's one room, but it doesn't make sense. It's all Victorian looking and creepy, but it makes money, I guess, because they rent out that room on weekends, so but yeah, but they did add like a window, so if you don't book the room and the room is available and open, you could walk right up to the window and look into the room. It's actually, if you're a ghost hunter, then it's a neat little feature because you may not be able to go in, but you can see the room. Although I will say that, like, one time I went into that room because there was a housekeeping lady. She was cleaning the room and preparing it, and we politely asked her, would you mind if we just quickly looked around? And she was like, sure, yeah, sure, So, and we made sure to thank her very, very well. Like, we're like, thank you so much for letting us see this. Because we know she was busy. She was busy working on that room, and, And I told my friends, like, okay, time to go because she's got to finish working, Like, I used to work in hotels, so I know that housekeeping, they're on a timer. They have to finish a room at a specific amount of time. So, but yeah, she was very nice to do that. But yeah, essentially, that's what I know about the forward B cabins, is that they were refurbished and given modern materials and like a dado at the bottom, but that's the extent of what I know. Justin says he would be a very valuable team member on the Queen Mary, Alex. They might even let you live aboard. I don't know if they'll let me live aboard, but it is an interesting notion. If I had the opportunity to live aboard the Queen Mary, I'd do it. I'd do it. I'd absolutely do it. Ask Shiloh. He would say the same thing. He would do it. He would live aboard the Queen Mary. I would love that. I would be I would happily be like their, what do you call it, mascot, you know, and make videos all the time about the Queen Mary and how awesome it is. So I'd love to do that, but I don't think that'll ever happen. So OC Aviation, I'll just recap because I already said it, but yeah, the B340 is still around. It's been redecorated. You can view it through a window during the week, but I think on weekends they allow it to be booked out. It costs a lot of money, I hear, but it's because it's a popular room. Let's see here. Hey, Kevin. Arnaud says, because in the aft engine room, we could see the hatch. If the hatch was not decked off when we are inside of the aft engine. But it is. The hatch in the aft engine room is in the center of the room, and if you look up, it's completely decked over. There's beams and everything above it, and that's because when you're in that aft engine room, what's above you is like a meeting space. So, I'm trying to yeah, so it's completely decked over above. So there's no hatch left there. It's sealed up. Carlos says, is Queen Mary's electrical switchboard still on the ship? There were a lot of them. If you'd have to be way more specific, because there were a lot of switchboards and they were all over the ship for various things. So for instance, the one that you can see and touch is if you go into the steering gear room, there was a steering gear switchboard. It controlled all of the electrics and stuff like that for the steering gear area. And you can actually walk up to that and touch it. It's really cool. But if you're talking about like some of the switchboards, because there was a lot of them all over the ship. There was a switchboard in the radio transmission room, and there was a switchboard in the emergency generator room, to which, to my understanding, I've never seen it with my own eyes, but to my understanding, the switchboard in the emergency generator room is still there. But if you're talking about the switchboards that were inside of the turbo generator rooms, the forward and aft turbo generator rooms, those are all gone. They've been completely removed. So it's just white steel behind that. So, but there are some electrical switchboards still on the ship, and the one that you can see and touch is in the steering gear room. Denote says, hey Alex, what do you think if Queen Elizabeth stayed in Florida? It would have been cool if they were able to take care of the ship, but the Floridian climate is not good for a ship like the Queen Elizabeth. She probably would have rotted from the inside out. But if they had managed to find a way to take care of her very well in that climate, that would have been cool. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have much of an opinion about it because ultimately the ship was sold and, eventually accidentally burnt, well, not accidentally, but burned down. Aqua says, could they have been on a floor above or below? Not below, because below is our deck. No, I mean, I guess if there were people in the kitchen. But no, I don't think so. So people say, oh, well, the ship is made of steel, so sound carries. Well, yes, if sound is directly applied to the steel, the sound will carry across the ship. But if the sound is applied to the wood or other materials, that will absorb the sound. So, so it's not like people are walking directly on the bare steel and I can hear them. They're walking on some kind of thing, but anyway, the point is that the way that it sounded like the person was right next to me. If it sounded like it was coming from another level, I wouldn't have, stopped and turned around as if there was someone there. I mean, you can hear the difference between someone being at a distance versus someone being right behind you, like right next to your shoulder. So you can hear that difference. That difference. And so yeah, I mean, there's no way, even if someone was walking on the bare steel of the ship and it carried to where I was, it would still sound muffled. It wouldn't sound clear as a bell. So yeah, there's no way, there's no way. That's why I don't like when people say, like, well, and not that you said it, but there are people who say, like, oh, but, the sounds across the ship, the ship echoes these things as made of steel, and it's like, yes, but only if the sound is directly applied to the steel. If someone's walking on, a carpet, the carpet has under layers, too. The carpet has, like, a soft, squishy underlayer and all that. Well, not that squishy, but an underlayer for, what do you call it? All carpets have this. It's for noise suppression. So you wouldn't hear those kinds of footsteps coming right up to you. It's just, yeah. Yeah, so that's my thing on that, but Arnaud says, another thing that I am questioning about is the gigantic open hole in the expo hall forward of the aft engine room. Is the forward engine room in the expo hall, isn't it with boiler room 5? Is it the forward engine room in the expo hall, isn't it with boiler room 5? Oh, I see what you mean. Right. So, so the expo hall is made of 3 different rooms. It's made of the aft turbo generator room. It's also made of boiler room 5 and the forward engine room. So those 3 rooms make up the exposition hall, or the expo hall, on the Queen Mary. And what they did for that area was they had completely gutted it out. So they had removed all the watertight bulkheads that separated those rooms. They had completely removed all the machinery and even all the decks. They removed that. Well, actually, there was no decks because the engine room and the boiler room had no extra decks in them. They were huge open spaces. So what you see in the expo hall today is they've reinforced all the steel that they took out. So all the ceiling and everything like that has been reinforced. And then they added decks into that room. 2 different levels were added into that room. So now it's a 3-level room. And they left what I call an atrium in the center. And it's meant to give the space more of an open layout, make it look nicer. And that's what they did with that room. And so the decks that you walk around in that room are not original. There used to be just big open voids in those spaces, aside from the pillars that support the ship above, aside from those pillars. So yeah. Tracy Hayden says, camera reflection with the light. So she's talking about the orb. No, because you see, my friend Chris, when he filmed that first orb, that camera he used, he had a special lens that costed him thousands of dollars. It's a special lens that does not reflect light, if you can believe that. It is a special lens that he bought that lens specifically because he did not want lens glare when he went to places in the sun. So, so even he told me, he's like, there's no way that was light glare because, you know, it was a special lens. Now, I don't have that lens. Technically, there would be lens glare, but there was no way this was lens glare because it happened the same exact motion, the same exact area, and my camera wasn't directly pointed, at least I don't think it was, directly pointed at a light source, but I know what lens glare looks like. I've seen it so many times because I've worked with cameras for the last 9 years on this channel, so I know how to recognize lens glare, and that's not what this was. So, yeah. I honestly don't think that did run through my mind with my footage, but with Chris's footage, there's no way that was lens glare because his lens does not reflect light. So, let's see. Hello, Erica. Hello, Dawn. Hello, Charles. So Alex says, good afternoon, Alex. What are your thoughts on the new Long Beach Bowl being built near Queen Mary? So you think it's a good thing or bad thing? Well, I already talked about it, but I will answer your question real quickly and say that that it's a good thing because the ship. So the money that the music festivals and the concerts that will happen there, the money that generates will go towards the Queen Mary's restoration. So the Queen Mary needs a bigger budget for restoration if we're going to see any positive things happen. And so that Long Beach Bowl, as they call it, will definitely help fund the Queen Mary's restoration. It's a good thing. And of course, the what do you call it? The amphitheater, both the temporary one and then later the permanent one, will be located as far as they can from the Queen Mary. So that way the music doesn't affect hotel guests nearly as much as the other festivals do, because the other festivals are usually built right next to the ship, so of course the sound and everything will bother the hotel guests. But the temporary amphitheater and the permanent amphitheater will be located as far as they can from the ship, about a distance of 800 feet, so it should assist with helping hotel guests to have a good night's sleep. It won't be perfect. You might still hear music, but it won't be nearly as loud as when the festival was right next to the ship. So, but yeah, I think it's a good thing ultimately. Very good thing. So hello, Erica, and that's awesome. Erica says, a family member of mine actually was brought home on the Grey Ghost during World War II. That's pretty cool. Would love to be able to do a video with you. I've always been fascinated with the ship, and my friends and I always used to go on it. I'll be very interested in doing a video with you. Thank you so much, Erica, but I can't do a video with every person that wants to do a video with me, because then I'd have, you know, hundreds of people lining up asking me to be on the channel, and I can't do that. You know, this is the Alex the Historian channel. But, you know, if you had a very, like, fascinating story, for instance, about your family member that was brought home on the Grey Ghost, you know, if you have that story and you have photographs and things, we can document it for you and put it on our website, RMSQM Wiki, because we do run a free encyclopedia that people can access and see all that stuff, and we are looking for stories about people who sailed aboard the ship, and people, especially if they were crew or if they were from the war, that kind of thing. So if you have that, we can do that. But yeah, I I can't just bring everybody who wants to be on my videos, or else it'll be hectic. Everybody would want to be on my videos. So, but yeah, that's one of the unfortunate things about running a YouTube channel. You have to be very selective who's on it. So, Tracy says, was there just this past weekend and got some excellent footage following the entire cutout of the former Portside Garden Lounge. So crazy you can follow the entire outline, one end to the other. Yep, that's true. Yeah, I often, like, when I'm on the ship, at least these last 2 times I was on it, I was able to trace, you know, the whole outline of it. And you can still walk the area around it, you know, because they haven't built anything into the corridor from that area, so you can actually walk around it as if you're avoiding it the way people would if they were trying to get around the garden lounge. So that's actually pretty cool. Arnaud says the crow's nest is not accessible, as I understand, in a tour of the Mail's live stream. I don't know. But yeah, no, the crow's nest is not accessible, and that's because it's dangerous. For one thing, that's like a 40 to 50 foot climb up a ladder. And so you have to, if you're like a crew, right, and you're trying to get up to the crow's nest, you have to go on B deck and then start climbing the ladder from down there. So it's like a 50-foot climb all the way to the crow's nest. And when you get to the top, the inside of the crow's nest, the floor, I wouldn't trust the floor of the crow's nest, because it's probably rotted out, honestly. You can see the rust from underneath, and so I wouldn't trust that floor to hold the weight of a person. The mast, however, is different. The mast, I've really examined the mast, because the mast hasn't been repainted in, man, decades. Decades and decades and decades. Probably since the Disney era, and that's even if Disney repainted it. So the mast itself, people wonder, they're like, oh, is it going to collapse because it's rotted or anything? But I've really examined it, and there doesn't appear to be any signs of corrosion on the mast at all. And part of the reason why that's so is because the mast is almost vertical. That means any rainwater and humidity and any water that pools up on the surface of that steel rolls off and drops down. So it doesn't have enough time to really corrode the steel. And the paint layer as well has managed to stay pretty darn stuck on that mast all this time. Excuse me. So there's no chips in the paint on the mast, which is just mind-boggling, because you know, the funnels will chip and stuff like that, but the mast has not chipped in all these decades, and it hasn't been repainted at least since the Disney era. So it's kind of nuts how well preserved the mast is. But the crow's nest is a different story. I don't think that one is safe to be on. I would like to see them restore. First of all, repaint the mast, so because it's faded by now. And then restore the crow's nest, you know, reconstruct it, and then, you know, and then properly cover it with canvas, because the whole wraparound veranda of it, I guess you would call it, used to have a canvas all the way around, so that way rainwater and stuff wouldn't get in and ruin it. And I wish that they would do that. But that's one of those projects that isn't really high on the priority list, because there's much more stuff inside the ship that needs attention. So Shipyard says, are there any photos of the main galleys in the modern day? There are. Some people have photographs. I've seen them. But nothing newer than 5 years ago. That's the problem, is that even people who have photos of what the galleys look like today, they've only had them for like up to 5 years ago. And in 2022, the main galley on our deck was completely refurbished with brand new equipment and hood systems and things like that. That kitchen now is working with brand new kitchen equipment, as well as there's a not original galley on Promenade Deck that cooks food for Promenade Cafe and Chelsea's Chowder House. Um, that galley has also been given all new cooking equipment, and so so yeah, those galleys have all new stuff. So, but I haven't seen anybody who has current photographs of what those galleys look like, because they should be much nicer now. They were given a huge refurbishment. So hello, Denote. Oh, I was going to tell everybody when the podcast was published. The podcast was published 38 minutes ago. So in case you're wondering and you want to see the podcast, that's already published. In fact, I'll end the live stream very soon, so that way some of you can switch over to the podcast and see it, because I want people to see it. Hello, Simon. Thank you so much. Hey, Sarah. How's it going? Can't stay long, but happy to catch a live. No problem. Aqua says, do you think they could make the Queen Mary any part of the 2028 Olympics to promote it? They are. They for sure are. Because the Queen Mary is Long Beach's, what's the word? Icon. And so the whole reason why the city has really been pushing for the restoration of the ship, and especially the construction of the amphitheater and, demolishing the abandoned buildings in the parking lot, not just the English Village, but they demolished the abandoned ticket booth, and they demolished a really ugly looking steel bridge that used to connect one side of the lot to the other. They've been doing all this work because they know the Olympics are coming, and the city wants to spotlight the Queen Mary and really advertise the ship, as well as just make it a cool place to kind of center a lot of the stuff around. So, a lot of celebrities and even heads of state, they'll be looking at places to stay in Long Beach. Some of them may want to stay on the Queen Mary. There's even some thought that it's possible the royal family may, some members, not all of them, but some members of the royal family may come to Long Beach during the Olympics to see the Olympic Games or do publicity events, and they may want to visit the Queen Mary. And so the ship needs to be prepared for that, and the city knows that, and the city is doing what they can to restore the Queen Mary in time for the 2028 Olympics. So I would say in the next 3 years, we're going to see some big changes happening for the Queen Mary that will help bring her back up to some of her former glory. So we're going to see some great stuff. So yeah. Ocean Liner Lover says, I think that they should restore the wings so I can see out on each side. Yeah, the bridge wings are part of a list of things that need to be restored, and I think they will. I think before 2028, those bridge wings will be back, and you can walk out over them. I'm pretty sure that'll happen. Justin says, an older woman who lives in my town was a war bride on the Queen Mary and was brought home to Australia and to her new husband there. Oh, wow. And if Long Beach buying Queen Elizabeth in 1968? Denote says, what's your favorite French ocean liner? It would be the SS France from 1916, I think it is. 1912 or 1916. I can never remember what year it was launched, because there were so many ships that were launched between 1911 through 1917. So, but it was the early SS France. I like that one. Very beautiful design. And as for your other question, if Long Beach had bought Queen Elizabeth in 1968, I don't think they would have. I don't think there was ever a chance of that happening, because they had already bought Queen Mary. And restoring that ship, the Queen Mary, cost them tens of millions of dollars to restore. they only had so much money. There was no way they were going to restore a second ship. And then if you put them right next to each other, it's the same thing I say for the SS United States. You can't put those two ocean liners, not the SS United States or the Queen Elizabeth, next to the Queen Mary, because there's only so many people that come to Long Beach to see a historic ship, and they're going to decide one or the other as to what ship they're going to spend their money on, because it does cost a bit of money to get on a museum ship. And I think that if they had put another ocean liner anywhere near the Queen Mary, it would have taken away some of the visitation and profit from the Queen Mary. And then both ships would have ended up being scrapped some time ago, probably 30 years ago. So yeah, I think it's a good thing Queen Mary's by herself in Long Beach, because she's got no competition for other ocean liners. So, yeah. Anyway, folks, I'm going to end the live stream now. It's been, technically I've been on the live stream for an hour and 40 minutes. But yeah, so there is a podcast that is already published that you can watch after this, and it talks about, my stay aboard the Queen Mary overnight, as well as the short film that we made called Alone at Sea. Please watch it, you guys. YouTube is not very good at promoting my videos, and they especially don't promote it to my own subscribers. So please watch the video, you guys, and if you like it, give it a like, comment below to tell me what you think of it, and as well as the fact that we have merchandise. You can find merchandise in a link below in the description of this video, as well as the fact that tomorrow I'll be on my friend's channel, Signs of Amusement. I will be talking about my most recent visit to Disneyland and my thoughts on Disneyland, and so that'll be tomorrow at 11 a.m. on his channel, Signs of Amusement. There's a link below for his channel. We have merchandise. There's a link for that. Did I already mention merchandise? Anyway, there's a link for that below. Yeah, that's about it. But anyway, thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody.